And this is why the liberals hate the book of Daniel, because they're saying there's no way he could describe the Grecian Empire with that kind of detail and accuracy and it all be future. They're saying that's impossible. Why, for somebody to do that, there'd have to be a God who would tell him. And they're saying, since we know there's no God, this has to be a forgery that somehow was written after the fact and snuck into the Bible, which is, you have to have more faith to believe that than just to believe Daniel. So, and we now have, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, some things there, like the book of Daniel, written 100 to 200 years before Christ. So you can't say that this is all historical and it's a forgery and it was written to try and make people think that God was real and the prophets were real, because even though we don't have earlier copies of Daniel, the manuscript we do have, which could not possibly predict the time and date of Christ based on Nehemiah's decree, and yet here's a manuscript. It gives a timetable 100 to 200 years before Christ comes, and bingo, he comes right on the date Daniel said. So the Dead Sea Scrolls are a great friend to Bible-believing Christians because they validate that Daniel was a prophet of God. And for him to say that, God had to reveal, that's the only way he could know that. God had to reveal it to him. Daniel had no idea when Jesus was coming, and yet he nailed it. He just nailed it. And how do you account for stuff like that? Well, if you're an unbeliever, you ought to be shaking in your boots. You ought to be terrified. I would be hard-pressed to get a good night's sleep unless I could come up with some alternate explanation for the book of Daniel and how that's feasible, that he could nail those Bible prophecies if there is no God. That's a pretty phenomenal feat he pulled off.